Hey there, guys. Welcome to Introduction to Sociology. And this course, as always, follows the American Sociological Association standards for high school sociology. And we hope you'll enjoy this lecture about deviance. One of my favorite topics, I got to agree. So think about it. Is it deviant to drive 60 in a 55 zone? Why? Why not? What do you think? Well, some of you might say, well, if the law says 55, then if you're driving at 60, you're deviant. You're deviating from the law. But if you kind of look outside your window, you probably notice most people drive at 60, they drive a little above the speed limit. In which case, driving at 55 is deviant because the norm is 60 to 65. In fact, sometimes people may cause an accident because they're driving at the speed limit, but everybody else is driving faster. So, another question. May seem different question. What is the difference between spit and saliva? You ever thought about that? Give you a minute. So, what is the difference? Specifically, spit is when something comes out of your mouth, right? You spit something out of your mouth. Saliva is what is in your mouth. Chemically, they're exactly the same. In fact, the difference is made when it leaves your mouth, right? Inside your mouth it's saliva, outside your mouth is spit. So would you do this? Just spit? Would you do that? Yum. Well, it's just this. It's just saliva. I just took it out and put it back in again. But I bet most of you were kind of freaked out by that. He just licked spit off his hand. Right? We have a different conception of the same thing based on its position. When it's outside, we think of it as disgusting, as dirty. When it's inside, well, it's part of our body, right? Just like blood or gore or anything else that's part of your body. Almost everything that comes out of your body probably is most people would find pretty disgusting, right? And it's again, the point is, it's not about the thing itself, it's about how we see it, right? And that's what it comes down to, well, really everything in society. But deviance, one reason I like deviance is because it really reveals this aspect of social life. So what is deviance? Specifically, deviance is any behavior that the majority of people in a given society view unfavorably. In fact, we should probably say the people in a given setting, because deviance can be widely varied even within the same society. Usually the nature of deviance is it's seen as negative, something that is not normal and therefore usually results in hostile reactions. Something is deviant because we say it's deviant. In other words, there is a by definition, it's all about how we see it or what we say about it. And it ultimately comes down to, it's all about group conformity, conforming to a particular group. But of course, what is the group? And when different groups define different deviance differently, what happens? Think about, for example, cheating in school. Right? Many times, of course, as a teacher, I would say cheating is terrible. Nobody should cheat. When you cheat, you only cheat yourself. Right? But students might say, well, hold it here. If you know the answers and you don't tell me, geez, how can you be my friend and not tell me the answers, right? Now, depending on different cultures, different situations, we may see that differently. But I know many places where students will literally punish a student who refuses to help them cheat. Right? And even, I have to admit, when I was a student, I have to swear, I didn't cheat. Scouts honor. Scouts honor comes honor. I did not cheat, but I would never, ever have turned in another student for cheating. I mean, that would have been a gross violation of the student code, not the official code, but the unofficial code of students. So deviance, it depends on who's looking at it. It's relative. There's no standard that says this is deviant and this is not deviant. Even things like killing people it cannot be considered necessarily automatically deviant, because there are lots of situations in which you would be considered deviant for not killing somebody. So what is considered deviant? As I said, it's relative. Deviant acts will vary from time to time, place to place, group to group. Used to be a crime not to go to church. You would get fined. You may have gotten thrown into prison for failing up to Sunday Mass. Now it's normal, right? Well, for most people, right? Most Americans do not go to church on a regular basis, right? However, some communities who are more religious, some different religious sects, such as the Amish, such as maybe evangelicals, for these people, it's much more normal to go to church. But it's interesting. You notice, for example, sometimes Christians say they feel persecuted. They feel like a minority. They feel like they are the deviant ones in society, because the dominant society doesn't say to everybody, thou must go to church. So the idea is there are shared norms within every group. When you violate those norms, you're considered deviant by that group. But it is going to depend on what's considered deviant, who defines it, and who can make the label stick. Right? So there are power dimensions involved in deviance. Another thing is we must consider, of course, as we've said before, deviance may be redefined over time. In other words, it may be defined downwards. So something that was considered highly deviant becomes almost normal, such as the example before of going to church or not going to church, or divorce, right? So it used to be terrible to be divorced, now it's normal. Some other activities have become upwardly defined. So activities that were considered normal are now considered deviants. So, for example, when I was a child, a lot of child rearing strategies would now be considered child abuse, frankly, right? Such as slapping your child or hitting your child or punching your child, particularly in public, right? Drinking and driving is another great example. When I was a kid, people would drink and they would drive, and if they killed somebody, they'd say, "Oh, boy, I'm sorry, I was drunk," and they would get less sentence, because the courts would say, "Well, he wasn't in full command of his senses." Now it's the opposite. Now, if you drink and you drive and you cause an accident, your sentence will be doubled or tripled or quadrupled. So again, deviance is relative. It is constantly being redefined as social standards of morality or normality are redefined. So, what is the purpose of deviance? Now, functionalism has a very clear answer. First of all, as we talked about before, functionalism is all about bringing people together. So one of the most important things, as you've seen throughout this course, functionalism constantly emphasizes the need for social solidarity. And the best basis of that is conformity. So remember, going back to Durkheim's very early work on division of labor in society, solidarity based on similarity is a very powerful form of solidarity. So that means we need to conform. We all need to obey the same rules. Right? Now think about it from a practical point of view. What if somebody has a job and they don't do it? They don't follow the rules for their job. Therefore, their job may not be completed, and you could have a collapse, right? What if the police decided we're going to show up anytime we like? What if doctors or hospitals decided, we'll just close down anytime we feel like? We don't need to have regular hours, or we don't need to have standards or silly things like medical degrees. Who needs that, right? So the point is, they're saying we need conformity because we need to have rules, we need to have regulations, and they need to be followed. right? So this is why conformity is so prevalent and so enforced, right? The other thing is, if deviance becomes persistent and widespread, this is going to undermine our entire system of social credibility. For example, think about something like drug use, right? So, okay, it's all very fine if a few people are taking drugs here and there. Okay, they're happy. But what if everybody were taking drugs all the time? What if nobody followed the rules? What if everybody drove in the streets however they felt like it? Right? So you would feel this is a situation out of control. We cannot cross the street. We can't go outside. What if people are shooting each other in the streets randomly? This is our version of chaos, right? Anarchy, right? How could we have social order with all this anarchy? So again, the need for conformity. And finally, trust. I mean, very simple social trust, which really goes through all of these examples. Think about your best friend. What if your best friend, you rely on him for everything, you can tell him all your secrets, suddenly he starts acting weird. Suddenly he starts doing things he never did before. Suddenly he starts ignoring you, or maybe spying on you, or following you around. You should be like, can you trust him? This guy's acting weird. He's no longer my friend even, right? Because your friendship is based on a certain understanding of what the other person, who the other person is and what they're doing. Suddenly you're like, I don't even know who this person is, right? It's like the movies where they have a husband and wife and it turns out that they're both spies for a different agency or something, right? Imagine you wake up and you find out your best friend is an alien from outer space and you never knew it, right? Or maybe he believes some weird religion, right? It happens. Sometimes people get sucked into a cult and next thing you know, you don't know them. The point is, when people no longer conform to our expectations, how can we trust them? How can we get along with them? And this is the basis of all society. So conformity is a very, very vital aspect of society, so a functionalist would say, and frankly, I don't know how you can necessarily disagree with that statement. Anomaly, again, going back to anomaly, we've discussed several times. This is the idea of normlessness. So when we have a situation, as we discussed before, where we no longer understand why people are doing what they're doing, they're no longer following the norms or the rules, this creates a situation where we can't understand what's going on, who can we trust, who can we turn to, what is the truth? We can't get what we want or need from other people. We're going to stop giving them what they need or what we think they need, and we're going to be in a state of constant social war. So we need those rules. We need that conformity. Durkheim also made some very interesting arguments about the functions of deviance itself. In fact, in a very interesting passage in Division of Labor and Society, he compared deviance to the nervous system of the body, right? Like, for example, if you pinch yourself really hard, I mean, come on, pinch, right? It hurts, right? Try it sometime, right? Or try hitting yourself with a hammer or something. Hey, and I'm just kidding. Don't do that, right? So the point is, it hurts. Why? Do you want to hurt? No, you don't want to hurt, but you need that. Because if you don't know that it hurts, you can't protect yourself, right? So for example, let's say a dog is biting your leg, right? Normally you feel it, you'd be like, oh, there's a dog, get my leg out of the way, right? Naturally. What if you can't feel it? A dog is biting your leg, you cannot feel it. You'd be like, what's going on? Oh, you look down after half hour, it's like, what happened to my leg? It's gone. People be like, well, a dog bit it. Dog chewed it off while you were sitting there. We didn't say anything because we thought, I don't know, you were weird. What can I say? Right? So you need that, right? You need that pain in order to bring your attention. So you basically said the same thing for deviance. The deviance is the pain we feel when people reject our norms, right? And this pain is necessary. It gets us to focus on that issue. So let's say there's a particular issue. People are stealing food, right? So it focuses on that attention. But we can do several things. We can reinforce the norm. Arrest them all, hang them up, put them in jail, blah, 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 blah. That's one response, right? So that helps by reinforcing the conformity, saying, look, you're not supposed to steal. Boom, right? We'll throw you in jail, right? But that may not always be the right response, right? It may be better to clarify the norms. Say, you shouldn't steal, you don't have to throw people in jail though, right? But the point is, by reacting negatively, we'll clarify the norm. I'll give you a story. One time I'm with a friend, and I won't tell you who they were or where they were from, but they were from a culture or a place where when you got on a train, you had to do it fast because everybody else was going to be fast, right? So we were on the subway or the underground or whatever you want to call it. And it was in San Francisco, so it was the Bay Area Rapid Transit or BART, right? So here we are waiting for a train. They're in their culture. When the train stopped, everybody poured on as fast as they could so they could grab a seat. Right? Because if you didn't grab a seat right away, you were going to stand for the next 2 hours. Right? So, boom! They were vicious. Now, in California, we're a bit more laid back. Right? And besides, there's no rush, there's no crush. Right? So you stand back, you let everybody off, and then you slowly go in one at a time, and everybody slowly go. And there's lots of space because the Bay Area Rapid Transit is very expensive and people can't afford to even ride it. So there they are. So she's like this, and then she turns around and she notices that everybody's looking at her like she's a crazy person. Right? And that's how she looked. She looked, this is not appropriate behavior in California because we don't do that. Right? People are going to look at you and nobody had to tell her anything. Right? And 90% of the time, this is how we learn stuff. When people look at us weird, they look at us like, what are you doing with that knife and fork? And then we're like, oh, it's supposed to be the other way around? Right? So you see, very important. Now, the third function of deviance is to when we reinforce the norm, then people feel better about themselves. So you notice, whenever there's a big crime, people are fascinated. All the newspapers, all the TV stations are focused on this crime. Right? All this terrible thing, these terrible people do this terrible, and it's all about how terrible they are, and how deviant they are, and how evil they are, right? And this makes everybody else feel better. Because we're like, well, I'm not a terrible person like that. And therefore we feel bound with the other people around us because they say, we're good people. We would never do that. And so think about that when the next time a big scandal happens. Right? Even celebrities, when they attack celebrities for doing this or that or the other. Michael Jackson, who was it, hung his child outside of a window. I mean, again, it's all about creating the sense of, oh, this guy's evil, there's something wrong with him. We're the normal people, right? Now, there's a fourth element to deviance that Durkheim explains, which is a positive element of deviance in itself. In fact, Durkheim himself pointed out, change will never happen unless somebody is deviant to begin with, right? Because if you think about it, if we all do the same thing all the time, we would never change. Right? So we need somebody to be brave and step out front. Right? Somebody needs to break the rules. Think about Christopher Columbus. Everybody told him he was crazy. You're going to die. You'll never make it to China. What does he do? He discovers America. Or finds America, whatever you want to call it. He bumps into America. Right? Think about Galileo, right? Galileo said, no, the sun does not go around the earth, the earth goes around the sun. You know, they killed him. Or well, they didn't kill Galileo. They killed Copernicus. Right? That's who they killed. Right? They killed Copernicus. They burned him at the stake. Right? Galileo, they didn't kill him. They banished him. They took away his job at the university. How dare he say things against what everybody knows is true. Everybody knows the sun goes around the earth, that the earth is flat. Everybody knows that. Right? So the point is, if some people had not had the guts to be different, to be deviant, we would never progress. We would never change. We would still be living in a cave, right? Essentially. Think about marijuana, right? So marijuana, for 100 years, they said it was a terrible thing. Now they're saying it's a good thing, right? We would not know if people had not been trying and experimenting with it and things like that. I'm not saying you should go out and be deviant. I'm just saying that they're kind of saying there is a function also of deviance itself. But keep in mind, it's a very expensive function, because most deviants are pilloried and punished by society, even when later on people say, well, actually, he actually had a pretty good idea. Who knew? So for right now, we're going to leave it right there because this lecture is getting a bit long. So we're going to cut the lecture in half there. And so this is the end of lecture 9A, and we're going to start lecture 9B in the next section. All right, have a good day.